Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Regina Dehan. I'm an acupuncturist and a naturopath, and I'm going to tell you the story about a patient of mine whose behavior became rather erratic to the point where I felt the need to contact the authorities. And that's the only time that's ever happened to me. And I suppose part of that had to do with the fact that it's an interaction that you may not have because it's sort of revolved around a narcotics prescription, but nonetheless, I think the same sort of thing could potentially happen to anybody. So I was working in Oregon City. I was essentially doing family practice with an MD who does family practice. And this patient came to me through that doctor's practice. Can you hear okay? And he had been a patient of the doctor's for many years. He had severe degenerative disc disease in his back and had been on OxyContin for a number of years and with a gradually increasing dosage, which was fine. He was currently taking Norco, which is hydrocodone, mixed with acetaminophen, and we were doing acupuncture to try to alleviate the pain, to improve his mobility and his capacity to do work, because he was on disability, but he liked to putter around his farm. So I worked with him for about 14 months. He was a pretty steady patient, and he had really good results with the acupuncture. His pain decreased significantly, and he actually reduced his use of the medication to where he was refilling a prescription for 30 Norco maybe every 2 months, which is really pretty unusual. Basically implies he was taking maybe a half a tablet once a day, which is trivial. Or he would take it as he needed it once in a while when he'd done something particularly aggressive on the farm. And that was great. I mean, that was pretty much as good as it was going to get. He had a housemate, a platonic housemate, who was also a patient of the doctor's, who she had some mental and emotional disturbances. She was also on some fairly heavy narcotic medication for her body pain. She had fibromyalgia. And during the course of my treating this patient, my male patient, she was discharged by the doctor for drug-seeking behaviors. And I got an email from my patient that said he was very distressed that the doctor had done that, and he wanted me to intervene. And that's not appropriate. Their relationship is their relationship. What the doctor has prescribed for her is what he had prescribed for her, and it's his prerogative to discharge any patient he wants to, and so, for whatever reason he wants to. So he didn't feel, I went and talked to the doctor about it, sort of behind the scenes, but he didn't feel there was any reason to go back on his actions. And so I got another email from my patient because I didn't respond. The doctor asked me not to respond to the first one because it's inappropriate to sort of engage in conversations about discharging a patient. You don't have to call them back. You don't have to do anything for them. You need to send them a letter that says you won't see them after such and such time. You will treat them up until that time, and you can give the names of other people for them to see, but it's not your responsibility to actually do that. I thought it was, but it's not. Because you don't really want to give problem patients to your friends. So you don't have to do that. And so I sort of was in between there. I felt a little bit of responsibility to my patient, but at the same time, I wanted to honor the physician that I was working for. So I honored the physician I was working for, and I didn't contact my patient. And so then we got a series of emails. I would get an email from him basically every day, expressing his dissatisfaction, starting to become actually threatening, saying things like, if you do not communicate with me, I'm going to contact, because he was on disability, he was going to contact Social Security Administration and have them investigate the doctor's office for malpractice or malfeasance for discharging that patient without continuity of care. They were going to, and if you do something like that, if a patient does complain to Social Security Administration or to the insurance company or something like that, they're kind of bound by their contract to come and investigate the situation. So even if there is nothing to it, it's very disrupting. So you want to avoid those situations if you can. So I started bringing all that information to my boss, the MD that I was working for, and saying, we're having a problem, what are we going to do? And he still felt that it was more appropriate not to respond, but he said that if I felt it was necessary to write a letter, I should do so. So I wrote my patient a letter, basically expressing that his behavior was inappropriate and that I wasn't going to be able to continue to treat him if he kept sort of sending these threatening letters to us. And I didn't approve of the way that he was expressing disrespect for the other people that I was working with. And that's where it ended. Pretty much I thought that's where it ended. I sent this very firm letter to the patient thinking, okay, this is the way it's going to resolve. He canceled his follow-up appointments with me, which I expected to happen. And that was that. And then I was here working about a week later, and I was in class, and when I finished class and everyone left, and it was evening, it was about this time of year, so February, it's dark by the time we leave school, I went to my box just to see, what I had in my box, and there was a letter from him, which meant, and it was not stamped, he had delivered it by hand, which meant that he had found out where I worked, had come to my place of work, and had been on the campus. And that made me very uncomfortable. And to add to that, the letter was very inappropriate. It expressed certain personal feelings of his towards me, and then it became threatening again that if I didn't contact him, he would have to follow up with whatever authorities he felt gave him the right to do what he was doing. And now that he was here on campus, I felt, okay, this is totally inappropriate. So I brought it to, I think, Carol Taub. Carol suggested that we talk to Dane about it because he was sort of the head of security. And the school sort of has a policy for things like that, but we kind of had to quickly scramble and make sure that there was something written down, that there was an official policy of what do we do when a staff member is essentially being threatened by a patient. And so we all considered it sort of practical to perhaps contact local police and let them know that this person was on campus inappropriately, without authority, without permission. And when we did that, I also mentioned it to my boss in Oregon City because they were concerned about it, the fact that he had shown up on my campus. And then I showed them the letter they had brought, and they felt it was very inappropriate. And my office manager there used Google and one of those services that you can get, that you can pay to do a background check, and it turned out that this particular patient not only had a prior history of stalking, he actually had a prior conviction for stalking. And so that kind of raised my alarm levels a lot higher. The other sort of more morphology issue here is he was about 6'5" and weighed 240 pounds. And so he's not the kind of person I would have wanted to encounter in the dark, on my own, in a parking lot. So I then took that information when we went to talk to the police again and asked them if they felt that it was necessary to get a restraining order. And they said no. The step before that is to file a formal complaint to the patient. So that's what we did. We filed a formal complaint with the police department, which is not a restraining order, but it's the step before that. And so if you send that letter, you send it return receipt requested, certified mail, so that you have an official receipt of it. And then once you've warned them, this is what's going to happen to you if you come back here again, you will be arrested and you will be filed a restraining order, and those are the sequence of events that will occur if you come back here, because you don't have permission to be on our campus. And it stopped. That was enough. That was enough. But it was a lot to have to sort of A, figure out the situation, B, be in the situation, and C, just sort of destroy what had been a therapeutic relationship. It was really unfortunate that things unfolded the way they did. I don't know if there was any way to have avoided it. And so far, there haven't been any repercussions. There hasn't been any follow-up to it. It was interesting to get the different reactions from the police. Multnomah County Police Department was very protective of him. They said that they couldn't give me the make and model of his car. They couldn't give me his driver's license number. They couldn't tell me where he lived. They couldn't, even though I had that information in the clinic. But they weren't at liberty to give out any of that information to protect his privacy. But when we did the same thing in Oregon City, obviously since I was working here and working there, we had to do everything twice. And when we sent the letter in Oregon City and the police department, we filled out the formal complaint with the police department. The police officer there said, "Do you want to know where he lives? Do you want to know what kind of car he drives?" They were willing to tell me everything about him, as a matter of fact. And they were very protective. So I thought it was very interesting that, you know, you're still dealing with the police department, but it was a different kind of network and different behaviors. And I thought that was odd. You would think that it would be a consistent sort of ethics, but that doesn't necessarily apply. Oregon City's a smaller place. They're a little bit more protective. So, and they were more on my side than they were on his, which was really interesting. So anyhow, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from that experience, and I nothing but compassion for that person. I feel bad for him. I hope he's found health care elsewhere. So.